Belgium, December 1944. Snow whipped across the Ardennes like powdered glass, carried by a freezing wind that made even veteran tank crews flinch as it sliced through seams in their uniforms. The roads were clogged with churned mud, ice, and shattered vehicles, remnants of the brutal opening days of the German Ardennes offensive. Amid the chaos, one American Sherman tank sat half buried in a snowdrift, steam hissing from its engine vents. Its gun barrel, its most essential lifeline, was warped, blistered, and cracked near the muzzle. A blackened ring marked where a premature shell detonation had nearly blown the turret apart. Every crew member who inspected it said the same thing. "This gun is done. Scrap the tank." German troops who saw it through field glasses laughed openly. A Sherman with a broken cannon. One Panzer crewman joked, "Let them charge. It will destroy itself before it harms us." But inside that crippled M4 sat Staff Sergeant Henry Locke, a 26-year-old tank commander with a reputation for stubbornness legendary even within the 3rd Armored Division. Locke had a habit of ignoring the rules when they got in his way, and surviving battles he had no business walking away from. When the battalion maintenance officer told him the tank was finished, Locke simply wiped snow from the cracked barrel and said, "It's not broken. It's just misunderstood." The officer stared. It exploded from inside the gun tube, Locke. Locke shrugged. "Then we won't fire it like a normal cannon." That night, while artillery thudded in the distance and German armor regrouped in the forest ahead, Locke and his crew, Gunnery Tech Lewis, Loader Ortiz, and Driver Sims, crowded inside the frost-covered turret with a lantern and a toolbox. What they found would have made any ordnance officer faint. The barrel was warped, yes, the rifling mangled, the muzzle slightly peeled, but the breech still cycled, and the tube, though deformed, was not fully sealed. Lewis muttered, "We fire one round through this, and it'll take our heads off." Locke looked him straight in the eyes. "Then we won't fire one round. We'll fire 11. Ortiz blinked. 11? Locke smirked. "There's a German convoy forming 2 kilometers north. If we hit them before they move, we break their advance. But to do that, we need surprise. We need speed. And we need a gun the enemy thinks is dead." Sims shivered. "You really believe this busted tube can fire?" Locke adjusted the lantern and examined the warped metal. "No, I believe we can make it fire." By dawn, after hours of freezing work, improvised reinforcement, and one terrifying test blast that nearly flipped the tank, Locke had turned a ruined cannon into something halfway between a field gun, a shotgun, and a madman's experiment in battlefield physics. It wasn't safe, it wasn't smart, but it could shoot. And that morning, as a column of German armored vehicles rumbled unknowingly into the valley below, Locke climbed back into the turret, slammed the hatch shut, and gave a single order: start the charge. The Germans were still laughing, but in the next few minutes, as Locke roared straight at them with a tank they believed harmless, those laughs would die fast, because the broken tank gun was about to destroy 11 vehicles in one impossibly reckless attack. The sun hadn't yet climbed over the Ardennes ridgeline when Locke's Sherman rumbled out of the tree line, treads grinding over frozen mud and broken branches. Frost clung to the armor like a second coat of paint. Inside the turret, breath turned to fog. Drifting in front of the red-lensed lamps the crew used to preserve night vision, Gunnery Tech Lewis stared at the cracked, reinforced barrel protruding through the mantling. "I still say this thing's gonna explode," he muttered. Locke grinned from the commander's seat. "Lewis, if it explodes, we won't be around to argue about it." Ortiz, hunched beside the ammo racks, shook his head. "Great. Inspiring." Driver Sims spoke over the intercom. "Convoy's dead ahead, Sarge. Picking them up on the ridge. Looks like half-tracks at guns, maybe a light Panzer." Locke pulled up his binoculars. Through swirling snow, he saw the German column. Vehicles lined up nose to tail along a narrow forest road, engines idling, men climbing aboard. They were forming up for a thrust into the American flank. "Perfect," Locke said calmly. "They're not expecting company." He lowered the binoculars and tapped Lewis on the shoulder. "Load the first round." Lewis hesitated at the ammo rack. "Sir, these aren't normal high-velocity charges. These are modified," Locke finished. "Exactly the way we tested them." Ortiz groaned. "You mean padded with wool, reduced powder, shortened casing?" And enough prayer to fill a church? Locke smirked. Ortiz, you underestimate the power of prayer. Load it. Lewis slid the first improvised round into the breach. The shell locked in with a dull, unsettling clunk. The plan: close the distance before they understand. Locke knew exactly how long he had. A damaged barrel meant the projectile lost stability fast. Anything beyond 700 meters was worthless. Beyond 500 meters? Dangerous. Beyond 300 meters? Deadly. But to everyone, not just the enemy. So Locke planned to do the unthinkable. Get within 200 meters of a prepared German armored convoy before firing a single shot. Sims revved the engine. We're going straight at them, aren't we? Locke nodded. Full speed. Lewis muttered, we're all gonna die. Locke patted his shoulder. Not before breakfast. The Germans spot them. The Sherman burst from the tree-line and charged down the slope, snow spraying from its treads in white arcs. Immediately, German soldiers shouted warnings. Panzer, Panzer kommt. But when their eyes fixed on the Sherman's warped barrel, bent, blackened, visibly cracked, they laughed. One German gunner jeered. Amerikaner kommen MIT Spielzeugeskutz. The Americans come with a toy cannon. A Panzer IV commander yelled back, don't waste ammo. That gun cannot fire. Locke smiled inside his turret. Good. Let's keep it that way for another 30 seconds. The charge. Sims pushed the throttle to the limit. The engine roared. The tank tore across the snow-covered valley floor, treads kicking ice behind it like twin storms. German half-tracks scrambled into defensive positions. MG-42 teams scrambled to set up, and that gun crew rotated their PaK-40 toward the charging Sherman. 250 meters. Sims called out. Lewis wiped sweat from his brow. Sir, that's close enough, right? We good. Locke's voice stayed calm. Closer. Closer. Ortiz yelled. What do you want to do? Shake hand with him. Locke ignored him. 180 meters, Sims called out. The Panzer IV trained its turret toward them. Lewis panicked. Sarge, they've got US. Locke raised one finger. Not yet. The first shot fired from a broken gun at 160 meters. Locke finally gave the command. Fire. Lewis yanked the trigger. The turret filled with white smoke and powder dust. A thunderclap punched through the tank hull. The cracked barrel belched flames sideways through its ruptured muzzle brake. And the shell, stabilized only by Locke's improvised rifling wedges, screamed out in a wobbling arc, straight into the lead German half-track. Boom. The vehicle erupted, flipping onto its side and blocking the entire convoy. Ortiz jerked back. It worked. It actually worked. Lewis blinked. We're alive? Locke grinned viciously. One down, 10 to go. But the Germans had stopped laughing, because a tank with a broken gun had just fired a shot they believed impossible. And worse, it had landed. The enemy reacts too slowly. The Panzer IV frantically adjusted its aim. MG-42 teams opened up. The PaK-40 fired, but missed wide due to the Sherman's charge speed. Locke didn't flinch. Load the next round. Ortiz hesitated. Sarge. Every shot increases the chance the barrel ruptures. Locke leaned into the intercom. So don't miss. Ortiz swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Lewis rammed the second improvised round home. Locke shouted. Sims. Hard left. Bring us to 140 meters. The Sherman swerved, snow exploding under its treads. Kaplan locked onto his next target, another half-track. This one mounting a 20mm cannon. Fire. Lewis pulled the trigger. Boom, crack, whoosh. The barrel belched sideways, flames again, smoke filling the turret. The shell streaked out, wobbling unstable, but on course until it hit the half-track's magazine. KRRT Joan. A pillar of fire shot upward. Ortiz screamed with triumph. That's two. Locke nodded once. Keep loading. Because the charge had just begun, and the next 9 kills would only get crazier. Smoke rolled across the valley as Locke's Sherman barreled through the snow, leaving burning half-tracks behind it like wreckage from a runaway freight train. The Germans had expected a crippled tank, not a charging monster with a broken gun that somehow kept firing. Inside the turret, Lewis coughed violently. Sarge, this smoke is getting worse. The breech seals degraded. Locke wiped soot from his face. Then we fire faster. Ortiz, loading another improvised round, stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Sarge, you realize that's the opposite of what we should do, right? Locke grinned. And yet here we are. New German targets, a defensive line forms. Ahead of them, the Germans scrambled to form a new defense. A PaK-40 anti-tank gun dug in on the left flank. ASD, KFC, 222 armored car revved forward on the right, and two Panzer Grenadier squads leaped from trucks now stuck behind the burning ranks. The Panzer IV commander screamed, Zerstort Dyson Verruchten Sherman. Destroy that crazy Sherman. Sims accelerated directly toward him. Lewis shouted, we're going straight into their kill zone. Locke didn't hesitate. That's exactly where we want to be. Shot number 3, the armored car. Target, 222 armored car. Sims, give me 130 meters. Sims swerved right, closing the distance. The German 20mm cannon opened up, shots pinging off the Sherman's glassy plate in bright sparks. Ortiz slammed the next round in. Sarge, the casing's loose. This thing's gonna lose pressure. Then hit it before it can. Firing. Lewis pulled the trigger. The gun roared again. This time the internal recoil felt uneven, violent. But the shell flew and struck the 222's turret ring. The armored car detonated like a blown gasoline drum, flipping backward. Ortiz hooped. That's 3. Gun still intact. Lewis glanced at the warped barrel, which now emitted a faint, ominous whistle. For now, he muttered. Shot number 4, the PaK-40 duel. The PaK-40 crew corrected their aim. PaK-40's ready. Sims shouted. Locke saw the barrel swing toward them. He yelled, hard right, 90 meters. Sims yanked the controls. The Sherman slid sideways in the snow. The PaK-40 fired. Foom, clang. The shell slammed into the Sherman's left track guard, denting the armor but not penetrating. Ortiz shouted. That was too close. Locke. Lewis, take the shot. Lewis swallowed. No pressure, right? None. Just 1,000 screaming Germans watching. Lewis fired. This time the cracked barrel shook so violently that a strip of metal peeled from the muzzle. But the shot flew true. The shell hit the PaK-40's gun shield, ricocheted downward, and plunged straight into the gun's lower carriage, detonating the ammo crate. Boom. The PaK-40 vanished in a spray of shrapnel and shattered wheels. Lewis stared at the cracked cannon tube. It's not just broken, it's possessed. Locke clapped his shoulder, and it likes killing PaK guns. Load the next one. The Germans realized the truth. Up on the ridge, a German officer with field glasses turned pale. Das ist kein kaputtes. Hat es umgebaut. That's not a broken gun. He modified it. A nearby tank commander shook his head in disbelief. No one would fire a gun in that condition. The officer lowered the glasses. He would. Shot number 5. Panzer Grenadiers in the snow. 2 Panzer Grenadier squads rushed forward with Panzerfausts. Sims shouted, "You're going for close kill. 80 meters." Locke didn't flinch. Lewis canister round. Lewis blinked. "We don't have canister." Improvised canister. He pointed at the warp barrel. "It'll shred anything at this range." Ortiz loaded a modified shell with reduced powder and a stuffed projectile cone. Lewis fired. The shell exited the warped muzzle with a sideways spray of debris, transforming into a cloud of lethal fragments. It shredded the leading German squad instantly. Ortiz stared at the barrel. That wasn't artillery. That was a dragon. Locke replied evenly, "That's 5. Keep loading." A new threat appears, the Panzerjäger. From the tree line, a tracked silhouette emerged. A Jagdpanzer 38T Hetzer, sloped armor, high-velocity 75mm gun, designed to kill Shermans from long range. Lewis felt his stomach drop. "Sarge, that one can tear us in half." Locke smirked, "But it won't." "Why not?" "Because it thinks we can't fire again." Ortiz's eyes widened. "Oh no, you're not thinking, Sarge, you know." Locke gave the order. "Sims, charge the Hetzer." The crew froze. Sims croaked, directly at the tank destroyer, lock nodding, to kill a hunter. You rush it before it sights you. The Hetzer rolled out of the tree-line like a sloped armored predator, low, silent, and perfectly designed to kill a Sherman with a single shot, even with snow blasting sideways across the valley. Its jagged silhouette looked razor-sharp. Its 75mm gun already rotating toward Locke's tank. Inside the Sherman turret, Lewis whispered, "Sarge, that thing eats Shermans for breakfast." Locke didn't blink. "Ben, we hit it before it gets hungry." Sims gunned the engine, and the Sherman jolted forward through the snowstorm. A deadly duel begins. The Hetzer's commander shouted orders. Halt. Zealand. Fewer. Stop. Aim. Fire. The tank destroyer screeched to a stop, locking into a firing stance. Sims shouted, "Range 90 meters." Lewis panicked. "That's too close. He'll slice us in half." Locke leaned toward the periscope. He won't shoot if he's adjusting. And Locke was right. The Hetzer gunner was still calculating lead, elevation, and the Sherman's movement. Because Locke's tank wasn't moving in a straight line, Sims swerved, zigzagging across the snow, making the tank dance unpredictably. The Hetzer gunner growled, "Er bewegt sich zu schnell. He's moving too fast." The shot that shouldn't work. Inside the turret, Ortiz rammed in another improvised shell, this one visibly dented from the cold. "Sarge, the next shot might blow the tube. You can hear it straining." Lewis ran his glove along the barrel interior and felt the vibration. It's groaning, like it's begging not to fire. Locke smirked. "It'll fire. It always does." Sims called out, 70 meters. Lewis flinched. "That's suicide." "No," Locke said softly. "That's the sweet spot." He raised his hand. "Fire." Lewis closed his eyes and pulled the trigger. The most dangerous shot of the charge. The Sherman rocked violently, far more than before. A shock wave slammed the turret walls. The cracked barrel flexed, yes, actually flexed, and a ring of metal peeled off the muzzle like a shedding snake. Ortiz screamed, the barrel's tearing itself apart. But the shell flew, spinning wildly, wobbling like an unbalanced hammer, and struck the Hetzer's glassy plate at a perfect upward angle. The warped shell broke on impact, splitting in two, but both fragments punched through the thin top armor. Boom! A plume of flames burst from the Hetzer's roof hatch. The tank destroyer shuddered, froze, then erupted in a massive internal explosion. Lewis stared in awe. What do we even call that shot? Locke didn't hesitate. A miracle shaped like bad engineering. The barrel fails, or so the Germans think. Smoke poured thick from the Sherman's cannon housing. Ortiz panicked. "Sarge, the barrel's done. That last shot cracked it to the breech." Lewis inspected the tube and nearly fainted. "We can't fire again. If we do, the whole turret goes with it." Locke ran his hand along the trembling, overheated metal. "It'll hold." "No, Sarge, it won't." Locke looked at them with steady eyes. "It has to." The Germans, seeing the barrel fracture, cheered from behind their burning vehicles. One shouted, "American Erkanon ist tot." The American gun is dead. Another waved his arms triumphantly. "They can't fire anymore. Take the tank." German infantry surged forward. Sims swallowed hard. "Sarge, they're coming right at us." Locke sat back into his cupola and exhaled. "Then let's show them a dead gun can still bite." Shot number 7. The impossible final attempt. Ortiz grabbed Locke's arm. "Sarge, if you fire again, the gun will explode." "Not maybe. Not could. Will." Locke didn't argue. "I know," Lewis whispered. Then why fire?" Locke looked through the periscope at the armored car approaching, flanked by infantry. "Because they think we're done. Because they stopped respecting us. And because if we fire one more time..." He tapped the cracked barrel. "It might be enough." Ortiz stared. "You're insane." Locke nodded once. "Load it." The crew loaded the 7th round, hands shaking, ears ringing, knowing they were placing a live explosive into what amounted to a metal coffin tube. Sims yelled, "Range 40 meters." "Too close. Dangerously close." Locke whispered, "Fire." Lewis pulled the trigger. The shot that should have killed them all. The breech exploded backward in a blast of shrapnel and flame. The barrel split longitudinally like a bursting pipe. The entire turret shook violently, knocking all 3 men off their feet. But the shell still left the barrel, propelled not by rifle pressure, but by the sheer explosive force rupturing around it. The wobbling projectile traveled maybe 30 meters and struck the armored car square in the radiator grill. Kaboom! Shrapnel tore through the infantry behind it. Lewis coughed smoke. Did it work? Locke smiled weakly through soot. That's 7. But the barrel was gone. Ortiz pointed at the smoking stump where the muzzle used to be. Guns dead. Dead. We can't fire again. Locke nodded. Then we finish this with treads. He looked ahead at the remaining German vehicles. A half-track, a truck, and 3 light armor carriers, all within striking distance. Locke lowered himself into the turret. Sims, charge. The Sherman's gun was gone, shattered, peeled open, and smoking like a chimney struck by lightning. The Germans saw the ruined barrel and began shouting triumphantly across the snow-covered valley. Das Gestets ist zerstört. The gun is destroyed. Der Sherman ist wehrlos. The Sherman is defenseless. But Staff Sergeant Henry Locke wasn't finished. Inside the tank, breathing powdered metal and cordite, he gave a single command. Sims, run them down. Sims blinked hard. You want me to ram the convoy? Locke answered without hesitating. That gun got us 7. Our treads will get the other 4. Lewis whispered. We're out of our minds. Ortiz grinned through soot. No, we're out of options. The charge without a gun. Sims threw the Sherman into full throttle. The engine roared, deeper, angrier, as if the tank itself wanted revenge for the punishment it had taken. Treads clawed through snow, chunks of ice blasting out behind them. The nearest German half-track tried to reverse, but it was too slow. Locke lowered his goggles. Brace. Crunch, boom. The Sherman smashed into the half-track side, flipping it like a child kicking a toy truck. Men leapt from back, diving into the snow as burning fuel splashed across the vehicle. Lewis looked out the periscope, awestruck. That's 8. A truck tries to escape. A German Opel Blitz truck jerked forward, tires spinning on ice, carrying ammunition crates stacked dangerously high. Locke pointed. Sims, cut off. Sims angled the Sherman left, sliding across the snow until they slammed against the truck's rear wheels. The heavy tank crushed the axle instantly, sending the truck fishtailing sideways. Ortiz shouted, watch the ammo. Too late. One crate tumbled off the back, hit the ground, and detonated in a massive fireball. The blast lifted the truck off its own frame and flung it into a ditch. Lewis coughed. 9. Locke checked his hatch. We're still alive. Keep going. The infantry fight back. Panzer Grenadiers regrouped behind a shattered tree line, firing Panzerfausts. A warhead streaked past the Sherman's turret and exploded in a shower of snow. Sims swore. They're close. Too close. Locke pointed at the nearest carrier, then rammed the transport before they reload. The German troops scrambled back toward a SD KFC 250 Light half-track. Its engine sputtered, trying desperately to start. The 10th kill, a crushing blow. The Sherman hit the 250 at a perfect angle. Crash. The lighter vehicle folded under the weight, its front axle snapping clean in two. The armored hull bent inward like soft clay. Ortiz shouted. 10. Lewis stared at the cracked turret walls. How is this tank still running? Locke adjusted his headset. Sheer spite. The final vehicle. A desperate last stand. One vehicle remained. A small, fast SD, KFC, 251 and 10 variant with a 37mm gun. The German commander shouted, FHR, FHR, Raus, drive, out of here. The half-track jolted forward, trying to break away across the valley. Locke tapped Sims' shoulder. Last one, don't let him run. Sims grinned. Oh, now you want speed? Hang on. The Sherman accelerated down the slope, treads chewing through mud and snow. The German half-track fired wildly behind it, rounds bouncing off the Sherman's ruined mantlet and hull. Sims yelled, closing. Locke leaned forward. One shot or one hit. Lewis whispered, 11, we can make 11. The 11th kill, the ramming strike that ends it. At the last second, the German driver swerved, but the snowy ground betrayed him. The half-track slid sideways. Locke shouted. Now, Sims jammed the controls. The Sherman slammed into the 251's flank with the force of a freight train. KRRT crunch. Metal screamed. Armor buckled. The half-track rolled onto its side and skidded into a pine tree, splitting apart. Snow and debris rained down. Sims exhaled. That's 11. Inside the turret, silence fell. They had done the impossible. With a tank that should have been a coffin, with a gun that should have killed them, and with a crew that should have refused this mission. Lewis slumped back. Sarge, you're insane. Ortiz added, but you are kind of insane. Locke finally allowed himself to breathe. Then he spoke the quiet truth. That was the last round, and the last of the barrel. Were combat ineffective? Sims looked over his shoulder. You sure about that? They all turned. Behind them, 11 burning German vehicles lit the snowy forest like torches in the dark. Locke nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm sure. Snow continued to fall across the valley, settling over burning metal, shattered treads, and the twisted remains of an entire German armored element. 11 vehicles lay in wreckage, some burning bright, others cracked open like broken ribs, steam hissing from their engines. Locke's Sherman sat alone at the center of the destruction. Its barrel split open like a peeled banana, its turret scorched, its armor pitted with shrapnel scars. Inside, the crew stared in stunned silence. Lewis finally spoke. We should be dead. Ortiz nodded slowly. Absolutely, without question. Sims tapped the cracked dashboard with a gloved finger. Yet here we are. Locke leaned back against the turret wall, breathing hard, listening to the distant thuds of artillery echoing through the Ardennes. He finally said, we're still in a war. Let's not forget that. German survivors emerged. Across the field, half buried in snowdrifts and smoke, a handful of German infantry survivors crawled out from behind overturned half-tracks. One of them, a young Panzer grenadier with soot on his face, stared wide-eyed at the Sherman. He muttered, Yes, we're kaputt, I can no war kaputt. The gun was broken, the cannon was broken. Another soldier limped beside him, shaking his head in disbelief. Das war kein Panzer, das war ein Tier. That wasn't a tank, that was a beast. The Panzer grenadier swallowed, then whispered the words that would soon spread through German lines like rumor fuel. Der verrückt mit dem kaputten Gestures. The madman with the broken gun. American reinforcements arrive. Minutes later, 2 Shermans and a platoon of infantry crested the ridge above Locke's position. They froze as they surveyed the scene. 11 burning German vehicles illuminating the valley like a macabre Christmas display. One infantry sergeant lowered his binoculars slowly. Holy, he paused. Who did this? Another soldier pointed at Locke's Sherman. That one, sir. The busted one. The sergeant frowned. Impossible. That gun couldn't fire. Locke popped his hatch and waved weakly. It fired enough. The infantry stared at him like he had descended from a myth. Half hero, half lunatic. The tank inspection. An ordnance officer rushed down the slope with 2 mechanics trailing behind him. They circled Locke's tank in shock. Good God, the officer whispered as he traced a finger along the split barrel. The metal was cracked from muzzle to breech. The rifling was shredded. The mantlet was scorched black. He turned to Locke, incredulous. This cannon is ruined. It can't fire. It shouldn't fire. This is the most unsafe piece of equipment I've ever seen. Locke shrugged. It fired 11. The officer blinked. 11. 11. Ortiz leaned out of a loader's hatch. Yeah, we got lucky. Lewis corrected him. No, we got very, very unlucky. But Sarge here doesn't care about luck. Sims added. He scares luck into obedience. Locke smirked. Someone had to stop that convoy. Command's reaction. That afternoon, Locke's battalion commander, Major Ambrose, arrived on site. His jeep skidding slightly on the icy road. He stepped out, jaw dropping as he surveyed the carnage. Locke, he said slowly, did you do this? Locke nodded. With a damaged gun? Locke shrugged. With the only gun we had, Major Ambrose removed his cap, running a hand through his hair. You destroyed 11 vehicles, alone, in a tank that should have been at the scrapyard. Locke grinned. That's the thing, sir. Germans thought it was scrap too. Ambrose stared at him. Locke, I don't know whether to court-martial you or recommend you for a medal. Ortiz called out, Sir, we vote medal. Lewis added, and hazard pay for trauma. Sims yelled, and maybe a better tank next time. Locke snapped, no, same crew, same tank. Ambrose raised a brow. The tank barely functions. Locke looked fondly at the battered Sherman. She did her part. Word spreads through the division. By nightfall, soldiers across the 3rd Armored Division were repeating variations of the story. Did you hear? A Sherman with a cracked gun took out 11 German vehicles. No way. It's true. He used it like a shotgun. I heard he rammed half of them. One corporal summarized it best. That man fought like the enemy owed him money. Even German radio intercepts began mentioning it. American tank with defective cannon executed highly aggressive charge. Casualties significant commander unknown. Unknown for now. Locke's final thought that day. As twilight settled over the ruined valley, Locke's crew sat on top of their battered Sherman, eating cold rations by the heat of burning German engines. Snowflakes drifted lazily down, hissing as they touched metal. Ortiz glanced at Locke. Sarge, today was insane. You know that, right? Locke nodded. Oh, absolutely. Lewis added. And dangerous. Extremely. Sims chimed. And barely survivable. Locke smiled faintly, which is why it worked. He leaned back, watching the smoke rise into the winter sky. They laughed at our broken gun, but today we stopped the whole armored thrust. He closed his eyes for a moment, exhausted. And tomorrow, who knows? The Ardennes fell quiet that night. Snow drifted softly across the valley, settling over the burning wrecks of 11 German vehicles. Each one a frozen testament to a battle no one expected Henry Locke to win, especially not with a tank gun that should have killed him the moment he pulled the trigger. Locke sat against the side of his battered Sherman, its barrel split open like a cracked bone, smoke curling from its twisted metal. A medic tried to check his lungs, but Locke waved him off, eyes fixed on the battlefield he had just carved through the winter storm. Across the shattered valley floor lay the path of his charge. Churned snow, burning half-tracks. A crippled Hetzer torn open by a single impossible shot. And the crushed skeletons of armored carriers that never saw the impact coming. A young lieutenant approached him carefully. Sergeant, is it true you did all this with a damaged gun? Locke nodded, exhaustion pulling at the corners of his eyes. Broken, he said. Very broken. And you still fired it? Locke gave a tired grin. 11 times. Word spread fast, faster than the smoke cleared. American units whispered it with awe. German units muttered it with disbelief. The Sherman with the broken gun. The madman who charged an armored column alone. When Locke's commanders arrived, even they didn't know what to say. A major walked the field in stunned silence before turning to him and admitting, Locke, you just altered the entire flank of the Ardennes. And Locke, in his usual quiet way, replied, I just did what I had to do. In the decades after the war, tank crews would tell a story like a legend, a reminder that sometimes the battlefield doesn't reward the perfect machine, but the imperfect soldier who refuses to give up. Henry Locke went home with a quiet life, raised a family, but he kept one thing from that day, a piece of the split barrel mounted on his garage wall. When a neighbor once asked why he kept such a dangerous relic, Locke smiled and said, that thing tried to kill me, then it saved my life. So we call it even. Today, military historians still shake their heads in disbelief, because Locke's run wasn't just bravery. It wasn't just improvisation. It was the moment a man turned a broken weapon into an unstoppable force, and proved that courage, even when cracked and battered, can still fire true.